Craig Rupp is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Inovar, Inc. He's been there for the last 6 years in that position. During this period, the company's experienced incredible growth in multiple areas and also expanded into other areas such as Tech 8 Mexico. DeVon Labrum, who's also up here, is President and CEO of Juniper Systems, Inc., and is an industry-leading provider of ultra-rugged data collectors. They have headquarters here in Logan, but they now have other locations in England and Austria. Lastly, we have Kent Alder, who is an incredible business executive in the tech realm. He has been the president of Lundell Astro Circuits, the CEO of Electrostar, CEO of TTM Technologies, and when he retired, actually, it was the third largest electronic chipboard maker in the world. And he now serves on the board of both Inovar and Juniper Systems. So please give them a huge round of applause, and we'll pass it on to them.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We appreciate you being at Utah State. And, of course, we love having Aggies back on campus. Thanks to the Huntsman School for hosting this event. My name is Blake Durstell, and I'll be the moderator today. And I think what the format will follow is just ask a couple of questions and let you guys answer them, maybe specific ones occasionally, and then just general questions that each of you can chime in on if you would. So primarily, I think we're all interested to hear about your experiences as Aggies, as students here at Utah State, and how that influenced the career paths and choices that you made. All of you.
Okay. Well, I can go first since I'm in the center here. But, Utah State is a great university. I think it's one of the best universities, money for the education you can get, and a great staff. I remember when I went through Utah State, I think one of the questions was, how did I choose a major? It was mostly by elimination, a process of elimination. I didn't want to go to engineering. I didn't want to be in social aspects. I didn't know much about history, so I said business has got to be where I need to be. And then you go into the business and say about marketing, sales, that's probably not a fit for me. Human resources had some interest, but I like the analytical part of the finances. So I said finance is where I'll choose to be. And so that's how I got into finance. And years later, 4 years after that, I graduated from finance, went to work as an industrial engineer at the old Wurlitzer plant here, and then went into business, become a business manager of a small engineering firm. It was clear that I needed more accounting expertise, because accounting shows you the nuts and bolts, and it's the scorecard of the business. So I liked the accounting aspect, went back to school, got a degree in accounting, and then that was kind of the foundation. But it was a great experience. I noticed with our student athletes, their grade point average for all the athletes at Utah State is higher than 3, which is not good for me because I would have brought that average down. But I had a great experience.
Well, it's great to be here on campus. I am an Aggie. I love Utah State, and I love opportunities to be here on campus. It's fun to look out here and look at how young you are. And that inspires me, and I congratulate you for the things that you're doing and wish you all the success in the world. When I was here, it seems like it was forever ago, but, it wasn't easy for me to choose what I was going to study. For my wife and for some of our children, that decision of what to study at school really came easy. And some of them knew years before they got here on campus, what they were going to study. For me and for a couple of other of my children, it was a lot more difficult. And it was really hard for me. I started not knowing what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do something in the international world. I didn't know what. And somehow, some way, I landed in an engineering program, Craig. And wow, I lasted 3 years in that program, and I was miserable. I started just dreading school. It was a burden. I just really was struggling. I was figuring out that that's really what I didn't want to do. So I take my hat off to guys like Craig who are are smart enough and were able and willing to put in the amount of time required to succeed in an engineering program. But my life got a lot better when I got over here to the business building, and ended up finishing with a degree in business, and that was a much better fit for me, and has been really good over the years.
So, like DeVon, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm not sure who organized the panel, though. Next to me is a member of our board of directors, and he will scrutinize everything I say and do both today and on Monday when we have a board meeting. So thank you for this opportunity.
I'll watch the video.
You'll watch.
Yeah.
And then DeVon is leader of Juniper. Juniper is one of our largest customers. So there's a little bit of pressure here to say and do the right things today. As DeVon alluded, I didn't graduate from the College of Business. I am an Aggie. I graduated from the College of Engineering. Those of you that have an allergic reaction to that, I apologize. This is the first time I've ever been in the business building. We weren't allowed to come in this building when I graduated from here a long, long time ago. As far as why I made the career choices and the schooling choices that I did, going through high school, I did well at math, and I liked those science classes, and so everybody said, you ought to be an engineer. I listened to them, and it was really pretty easy for me to make a decision to come to Utah State and to pursue an engineering degree. So for the first 20 years of my career, I was in engineering roles, initially in product development, where we were actually designing, develop mass production type products. After that, I joined Inovar, initially as the vice president of engineering, doing manufacturing and operations type things. 6 years ago, I was asked to take over the leadership of the company. So I've had to learn the business side through the School of Hard Knocks, and it's been a great experience for me. But I can tell you we live in an extremely technical world, and it's incredibly valuable for me to have engineering background as I sit in any discussion with any customer. So that combination of some business understanding or business acumen, the ability to communicate and relate with a technical degree, I believe is an incredibly powerful combination.
Great, thank you. I wonder if each of you would be willing to take just a minute and tell us about your company, maybe the products that you produce, the size of your company, maybe just how many employees you have, and of course how many Aggies you hire every year.
With TTM, and I want to make sure I thank everyone for the opportunity to come here today. It's an honor to come back, and I love our football team. Anybody go to these football games? Because they are a lot of fun. I had to get that plug in because it is just fun, and you should be at the stadium whenever there's a football game. But with TTM, I started TTM in 1998. I'm the founding CEO. We bought a company in Redmond, Washington called Pacific Circuits. I think we paid $120 million for the company. It was about $70 million in annualized sales. The business grew through acquisitions. We made 4 or 5 acquisitions over the course of the next 14 years. And every time we made an acquisition, we doubled the size of the company. Like in 1999, we bought Power Circuits in Southern California. That doubled our company. Power Circuits strategically was a quick turn shop. They could service customers quick turn. We had the volume capability. So when you combine those, you could provide the customer with much more of their needs than you could individually. And circuit boards, that is the green board that you see in electronics, and then you put all the components on it that Craig assembles and DeVon produces. And so that's what we did, was just build the pure circuit board. We don't have any of our intellectual property. It all comes from our customers. After 2003, we bought the Honeywell's printed circuit board company. And this is an interesting story because at Honeywell, they had contacted us and said, we want to get out of the printed circuit board business. They had bought Allied Signal, and with Allied Signal came a printed circuit board. So it was kind of an orphan child to Honeywell. But it was doing quite well, so they were, okay, we'll keep it. But as soon as the market went down and they started losing money, it was something that they wanted to offload. And they had 6 facilities. We flew out, we looked at that, said, no way, we don't want 6 facilities. We only need 1 or 2. And so we parted ways. And then about June of that year, they said, we've downsized from 6 to 3 facilities. Are you interested? And we had private equity investors in our company who said, absolutely, we're interested. That's 3, you cleaned it up. And as operators, the CEO, I said, they're not there yet. And they wanted $40 million. And I said, well, it's not worth $40 million. So we had our little internal discussions, and we walked away. And then about November, just after Thanksgiving, they called and said, okay, we've cleaned the company up. We're down to 1 facility. Are you interested in just taking it? And I said, just take it? They said, yeah, it is yours. We have some tax reasons to get out of this by December, and it's yours. And so we really didn't like it, except for there was no downside, because for nothing, we got like 12 acres, 685 employees, about $70 million of revenue, and a lot of losses with that revenue. So we put together a business plan and said, we don't need this and this and this. Okay, Honeywell, you downsize and you turn that over to us in those conditions, which they did. And so here we are a month later, like the end of January, we're going to get our monthly statements, and my heart is pounding, right? What have I missed? How can this be? And we made money the first month, and we made money the second month. And then the market turns around, and now we're strutting through the hallways looking like heroes, right? And the employees love us to death, because if we hadn't come in, they'll probably close the facility. So, you know, that was a fun thing. But we got a facility that generates, I don't know, a lot of EBITDA right now for nothing. And then after Honeywell, I came back and bought the Tyco printed circuit board company, and we had 3 facilities, they had 9, so we actually bought the bigger guy. And that ended up with 12 facilities. We had to downsize a few of those facilities because we knew we were getting too much capacity. Strategically, they had aerospace and defense business, the leader in North America, and we needed that business. So that's why we went in and bought the Tyco. We ran that till about 2010. Then we needed to expand globally, so we bought a company in in Hong Kong, Meadville, which had facilities in China. Again, doubled the size of our company. After the Meadville acquisition, we were about $1.5 billion. And then about 2013, we bought Via Systems, which then consolidated the whole printed circuit board industry, got us into automotive, reduced our exposure to our #1 customer, which is, you probably have a lot of their devices, iPhones and stuff. They were #1 customer, but we needed to get away from the customer concentration. So a lot of advantages, each one of these. So today, TTM, I think we have 26 facilities, 11 in China, 15 in North America, 31,000 employees, 8,000 in the U.S., 23,000 in Asia Pacific. So it's been a fun ride. It's been a lot of exciting times. We've been through some down cycles. We kept a strong balance sheet because we wanted to make sure we were in a position to buy companies when we had the opportunity. I had a great management team. Some people, as you would transition, wouldn't make the next step. They said that that's not the direction we want to go. So we were constantly reworking our executive team, but we had great people that made all that happen. So it's a fun ride, and printed circuit boards, technology-wise, continues to evolve. It's a capital-intensive business. You have to constantly reinvest in technology. You can see what your iPhones do every day, and that requires a lot of strategic analysis on our part. So, sorry for the long answer, but that's who we are at TTM.
I want to clap. That's a big company.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
How about it, DeVon?
So Juniper Systems is a much smaller company than TTM, and we're a local company. Started and grown right here in Logan, Utah. Anybody heard of Juniper Systems? Well, that's awesome. That's a pretty good response. Thank you. We are a fairly conservative company, and our distribution is done, or our sales effort is done through distribution. So we don't do a lot of direct sales, and we don't have necessarily a lot of business here in the local community. But Nevertheless, we celebrated our 25th year in business this year, back in April. And we were founded in 1993 as a subsidiary company of Campbell Scientific, who's been around here in the Valley for longer than that, since the early 70s. And we've enjoyed really a good success story, if you will. And we started as a company with really one flagship product, and that was in the research ag market, where we had some on-combine weighing systems for collecting weight and moisture information on the combine when research plots were being harvested, and automated that whole research data collection process for those researchers, so they didn't have to spend months in the lab following the harvest to bag and analyze all the samples that they had collected during the harvest. And so that was back in 1993. I started with the company in 1998, and there were about 20 employees at that time. So we were a pretty small company, small group. And at that time, we started designing and developing rugged handheld computers that were integral to the data collection process on the combine with our ag products. But also, what it did was allowed us to launch into a variety of other markets outside of agriculture. And so we've really, over the last 25 years, had a pretty steady growth rate. We've had some years that we've seen some spikes in growth. In the last couple of years, we've had just over 20% growth on revenue year over year. But over the past 20 years or so, we've enjoyed a pretty steady growth of around 15%. And what that's allowed us to do is to grow from 20 employees when I started up to about 170 employees today. And the market continues to grow, and the outlook is really good. But where we started with research agriculture, that market today represents about 15% of our revenue. Today our largest market is in what we call geospatial, which is primarily land survey and construction. So our rugged computers are used by land surveyors and engineers around the world for laying out job sites, be it road construction, buildings, whatever it is. And so that land survey and construction market represents our largest market today. We also have markets in natural resources, forestry and wood products markets. Foresters that are determining their timber inventory on the stand in the forest use our product to collect that data. Another market that we serve is one we call utilities and public services, which is primarily utility and meter reading. So water and gas meter readers. In the old days, they used to go around and punch in all that data when they'd manually read your meter at your home. And today there's still some of that going on in smaller communities and still a fairly large business there. But a lot of that has gone electronic, and they're using radios to automatically read those. In a variety of different ways. But that's a good market for us and growing. And within that market also, we serve law enforcement and military and municipal operations. So towns and cities will use our computers for asset management and facility maintenance stuff relative to the municipality. And then the final market that we serve is sort of a melting pot of anything that doesn't fall into those other markets, and it's one we call the industrial market. And primarily in that market space, we serve the oil and gas market, pipeline corrosion protection and close interval surveys on those corrosion protection surveys that are done. the rail industry, and anything that you can imagine in the industrial world where mobile data collection is happening are customers or potential customers of what we do. And so really our focus is all around mobile data collection and in extreme environments. So be it extremely cold, very hot, very wet, our equipment is built to withstand the rigors of those environments. So they're waterproof, shockproof, dustproof. You can kick them around, drop them, throw in the truck, what have you. So,
Great. Thank you.
Similar to Juniper Systems, Inovar is also relatively small, privately held company. Started here in Logan, Utah 20 years ago. Our 20th anniversary is this year. We just celebrated it back in August and September. The company started in Hiram, Utah with 11 employees, and they were building some small commercial products for circuit boards for commercial products in a converted gas station in Hiram. In 2000, the company was moved from Hiram to the west side of Logan, where it continued to grow. Just this past summer, we moved from the west side of Logan to Innovation Campus. So we're the big new building on 800 East, just down from the stadium. We now have 120,000 square feet. We have about almost 400 employees here in Logan, and another 120 employees in our Tecate, Mexico facility. So Inovar has really three types of customers. About 50% of our revenues come from customers that are in the military, aerospace, defense arenas. 25% of our revenues come from medical customers, where we either build circuit boards or medical devices. And then about 25% of our revenues come from commercial products, similar to the ones that DeVon has just described to you. So TTM is one of our suppliers. They're one of our largest suppliers. We buy bare circuit boards from companies like TTM. We buy the components all over the world. Our supply chain stretches from the United States into Southeast Asia and across pretty much every country in Southeast Asia. We do the assembly of these circuit boards in our factory here in Logan and in our factory in Tecate, and then we provide those finished assemblies either directly to the consumer or to our customers. In terms of our customer base, so the Mil Aero Defense, if you're familiar with some of the large defense contractors, those are our customers. Our largest customers are companies like L3 Communications. We build circuit boards and final assemblies that end up on the Apache helicopter. They end up on the F-18 and the F-15 fighter jets. They're the primary, what are called the command data links that communicate information from the pilot back to a control center. We're building the circuit boards and those sub-assemblies right here in Logan, Utah. We build handheld radios that warfighters carry with them in theater. We also build a number of different circuit boards for different missile programs. If you've heard of Raytheon Missile Systems or General Dynamics, we build a circuit board that goes into an Excalibur missile system. To give you some perspective on this missile system, a missile could be launched from Brigham City, 22 miles away from here, and it has an accuracy of 3 meters. So that means from Brigham City they could easily hit this stage 100% of the time. And we build the circuit board, the primary controller that controls that missile system. We also build a circuit board that goes into a defensive weapon. If you've heard of intercontinental ballistic missiles, those are offensive weapons that are stationed all over the world. We build circuit boards that go into what are called standard missile. This is a defensive weapon system. From the time that an ICBM is launched, they have about 14 minutes to make a decision on whether to launch defensive weapons. And Inovar builds a very large circuit board that ends up in that missile that's intended to defend against incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles. So right here in the factory, Logan, Utah, is where we're building those weapon systems. For medical, if you know someone that's had an angioplasty procedure, we probably built the circuit board here in Logan that was used in the pump as that balloon is inserted into a patient's anterior wall. So we build about 50,000 of those circuit boards every month. So some of you must know someone that's having an angioplasty procedure done. We also build circuit boards for a company in Salt Lake that builds imaging devices. If you go to the doctor or the dentist and you have an x-ray, we probably built the circuit boards that ended up in that imaging system that took the pictures for your doctor or your dentist to look at. We build a number of different commercial products. One of our largest customers is a cell phone boosting device. We build all those circuit boards in Mexico. We build circuit boards that end up in boosting equipment to boost the performance of automobiles. So we're a contract manufacturer primarily. We do have a design team that assists in the design of products and test systems. We do all of the sourcing of material. So a customer can come to us. We will develop the entire supply chain, the test system, and then we will procure, manufacture, and ship finished goods to those customers.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's pretty amazing to believe that these things are happening right here in Cache Valley. So the next question I had, and Kent, maybe you can address this, is how difficult, or is it an advantage or a disadvantage to be located as a small business that has an international reach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And within Cache Valley, there's advantages and there's some disadvantages. And that's probably how it is with every location. And I mean, it's one of the advantages of Cache Valley is having Utah State here, who produces great graduates every year. So you've got a workforce that's pretty educated and skilled from that standpoint. I think the culture in Cache Valley, we have 25 different locations in TTM, so I get to see the culture in each one of those locations. And the culture here in Cache Valley is one of service. I mean, it's a customer service focus. So you don't have to go in and say to the employees, we got to really take care of customers, because there's already a built-in customer service focus within the valley here. Some of the drawbacks, there's not a lot of diversity running around in our valley. I think that's a drawback. I think the fact that we're quite a ways away from Salt Lake and the bigger cities, a little bit of a drawback. The unemployment here is about zero, I think. Negative. Yeah, see, DeVon and Craig live that every day, so they're well aware of what that takes. But overall, it kind of is it's a great place if you want to have a company that can take care of customers and employees do well. I think that it depends too on what employees want. I go to New York, or used to go to New York 6 or 7 times a week, meet with all our investors back there. And it was surprising to me, because one of the guys said, I don't know how you live out there in Cache Valley. If I don't see a building or some concrete, I get the jitters, So it kind of depends on what kind of lifestyle you want and where you fit in. So Cache Valley is a good place. You can see by the businesses are there and what DeVon and Craig have done with their 2 businesses. It's a great place if you want to run a business.
Great, thank you. DeVon, I was wondering if maybe you could talk to us about the difficulties of hiring staff in such a small community, and how often do you go outside of the valley, or what are some of the things that our students could do to make themselves more prepared to work for a company like yours?
Sure, thanks. I'll maybe just build a little bit on what Kent said, because first and foremost, we live in a great place, and unlike the people in New York, I run as fast as I can to get out of the city. And, Logan's about too big for me. I don't want to live in Logan. I live out in the communities out in the valley. So I'm a country boy. And we live in a great place for somebody like me who wants to live here. And so, like I said, just building on what Kent said to answer Blake's question, it really does depend on what people are looking for. We do have a good culture, and the people here are good, solid people. And the benefit to being here in this small community is that those of us who live here generally want to be here. We've made a choice to do so. We've made a conscious decision to be here. And so that translates into some longevity also. in terms of getting people at work that are able and willing to stick around and to be part of the company for a long term. To that end, we at Juniper Systems really have a very low turnover rate. So that's a great thing and a benefit. But it can present challenges, especially in tight labor markets. And for the last 2 or 3 years, especially technical disciplined career paths are extremely hard to fill positions for, meaning that there are more jobs than qualified people to fill them. And that's when we have a challenge in the small community. And, you've probably looked around and you may know this, but, Cache Valley doesn't necessarily represent the highest salaries that you might find even in the state, let alone across the country. And so you have to battle with that, and that's put pressures on us as well to compete both locally as well as on a more national scale to get people to come to Logan, and for the income that you can offer them. I think we do a great job in providing very competitive salaries and compensation packages, but again, it kind of depends on what the individuals are looking for, and you have to get the right person that is looking for lifestyle and that really wants to end up here. But, in a tough labor market, it's been a challenge to find especially technically adept people to fill technician and engineering roles.
Great, thank you. Craig, I'm wondering if you could talk to us about Inovar's culture, the values you guys have in a manufacturing environment. How do you assure such a high level of quality in a manufacturing organization?
That's a great question. So we spend a fair amount of time talking about Inovar's purpose and Inovar's values. So we've defined as our purpose, the reason our organization exists is to improve lives. And we've segmented this into 3 different categories. Number 1 is we want to improve the lives of our customers. So we don't want this to be a transactional relationship. We want to actually improve their lives. On-time delivery, quality product, we really focus hard on making those meaningful relationships. The second group is what we call our customer's customer. So that's the warfighter, that's the patient, that's the consumer that's going to use the product. We want to make sure that their experience with the products we build are positive, meaningful experiences. The third group, as we talk about improving lives, is the Inovar family. So between Logan and Mexico, we have we have 500 plus employees, and if we look at their dependents, that family is well over 1,000 people. We want to make sure that they have jobs and opportunities where they can sustain and support their families and have the kind of work-life balance they're after. Below our purpose, then we talk about values. There are 4 things that we really value. So number 1, we value this Inovar family, and we've defined 3 characteristics that we care about. They all start with the letter E: engaged, empowered, and energized. Energized really should be hardworking, but I couldn't make hardworking start with the letter E, so we came up with energized instead of hardworking. Okay? So number 1 value is the people that work for us, the Inovar family. The second value is continuous improvement. In our organization, we have to be reinventing ourselves and getting better every day. Every one of our customers expect their products to come on time, and they need it to be less expensive next year and less expensive the year after that. So labor is not going down, it's going up. So we have to be continually looking at ways to improve and provide more cost-effective solutions the next year. Our third value is what we call extreme customer focus. Kent talked about customer focus. It's really a big deal to Inovar. Not just external customers, but internal customers. Whoever consumes what you do is your customer. We've got to have extreme focus on that customer. And then last of all, we talk about the value of disciplined execution. If you're going to put parts on a circuit board that defend our country, you better make sure it's done right. So we really focus on every operation, every time has to be done correctly. 4 core values are our Inovar family, continuous improvement, extreme customer focus, and disciplined execution.
Awesome. That's fantastic. DeVon, I wonder, in your organization, how do you guys ensure quality? I mean, it sounds like you're building products that last a lifetime almost. How do you engineer that, and how do you make sure that you meet the quality spec every time?
Thanks. To our detriment, maybe sometimes the product's too good. It doesn't fail soon enough for them to buy new ones. But really, quality for us really starts in the design and the development process. So our design engineers, as they begin designing a new product, really they have quality in mind, and they're making decisions in that design process that are going to produce quality product on the back end. And so that's number one. After that, we at Juniper Systems, we call it manufacturing, but we are not a manufacturing facility. We are an assembly facility, if you will, assembly and test. We do all our own design, but we work with companies like Inovar and TTM, in fact, to produce some of the components that we have designed. And so we work really closely with our vendor partners and ensure that they have the focus on quality that Craig just explained. That is huge for us. And so, they have to provide a great component that's not going to fail when it shows up on our dock to be assembled into a final product. And then our staff in production, there are several levels of checks that happen during the assembly process to ensure that we're building a good product that's going to not fail once it gets out into the field. And so we have a whole battery of tests that every product goes through in an environmental chamber and other test fixtures to ensure quality. And like I said, trying to flush out failures before the product leaves the dock. And then from there, once we ship product into the field, it becomes a customer service and a relationship management type operation. We are not perfect. We have failures, but we pride ourselves in having a quality customer service team as well that really has a dedication to understanding what customers' needs are and taking care of them when they have our products out in the field. And if they have a failure, we are doing everything that we can to make sure that is a painless process, as painless as possible, because we know that data that is being collected is highly valuable and in some cases cannot be reproduced. And so our efforts are all focused around what those needs are for our customers and ensuring that we provide them good product and then taking care of them throughout that process as they use it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Kent, I'm wondering if you would be willing to talk to us about the value of leadership in your experience, and maybe what are some of the characteristics or attitudes of the best leaders that you've had an opportunity to work with?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good question. Thanks, Blake. And leadership is just so crucial in any organization, and how well those organizations do a lot of times just comes down to the leaders at the top and the culture that they develop and implement into their organizations. I think with leadership, the objective of a leader is to paint the vision as to where this company is going. What are we trying to do? And we come into work every day, we punch in, we punch out, but what have we accomplished? What are we doing? We're trying to do what? And so as a leader, it's important that you paint that vision and you communicate that well. I don't know how many times I've communicated our vision and walked out of the room thinking, man, everybody got it. Well, not everybody gets it the first time. It's an ongoing communication thing of the vision, and then you break that down into goals, and here's what the company's trying to achieve with reject rates and with productivity numbers, with revenue and so forth. And so once you've got your vision and you've communicated and you've explained to every employee in that company how you achieve the vision and what their roles are and why they're important, that's what the leader does. And he is strategic, and the leader makes strategic decisions on where you go with the customer, what products do you invest in, what equipment do you invest in, how do you manage your employees. I mean, it's a pretty complex world. But the leader then develops a team around him, right? You can't do it all, so you've got to develop a team. And as Craig and DeVon both know, that having the right people around you are just crucial. I think with leadership, too, it's not always going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. And I think as a leader, it's important that you fess up early. And fess up's kind of the wrong word, but you explain why this happened and what we're going to do about it and how we're going to fix it, all those kind of things. I think the leader is responsible for the culture in his company. What kind of culture? Because every company has its own personality or its own culture. And the leader at the top is the one that says, we're going to have integrity, we're going to have honesty, we're going to ship on time, we're going to treat our employees with respect, we're going to satisfy our customers. All of that comes from the vision and the leader at the top of the organization and how people respond to that leader. And I had my COO at TTM, great guy, love him to death. And he had a lot of capabilities, but he came out of the Navy, right, on submarines. And so with that Navy background, it was more of a structure. You know, I'm the COO, so you will do what I say, you know. And people would do what he said, but was their heart and soul into that? And we had numerous conversations about how you influence people. And you've got to influence them without regards to your title. Motivate people. Make sure that they see the vision and that they want to do it. And that they're not doing it just because I was told to. And there's a big difference in job satisfaction, company performance, and all of those things go into lead. I could go on forever. It's a little bit complex, but
that's great. Those are great answers. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Can I add a comment or two? So this is probably the topic that I'm most passionate about. I believe leadership is the number one thing that will influence the success or failure of an entire organization. There's a book that was written a number of years ago. It's Jim Collins. It's called Good to Great. He outlines a number of different attributes that made these companies successful as they aspired to go from just being good to great. Leadership was number one. And he defines what's called a level 5 leader. This is not someone that's arrogant and thinks of themselves first, but they tend to be self-abasing and humble, and they tend to be focused on what goes wrong more than what goes right. If you want to read a great book on leadership, Good to Great by Jim Collins. There's a second book by Ken Blanchard called The 1 Minute Manager. Focuses on what really matters to a manager. I read a survey recently. The number one thing that influences a person's satisfaction or dissatisfaction as a company is the person that they report to. So you can have a terrible company with a great supervisor and people will be satisfied. You can have an incredible company with a poor leader or poor supervisor and there'll be incredible dissatisfaction. Leadership is the most important attribute in an organization.
Thank you very much. Along that vein, I wonder, Craig, especially as you kind of made the transition from technical to leadership, and maybe that's not the right terminology, but as you moved more into the business end, how important, and I'm probably going out on a limb here, assuming, was mentorship for you? And how do you guys find mentorship to work? Is that an important attribute in your development as a leader, and how do you pay it forward?
So I'm still trying to make the transition from technical to business. I'm still trying to learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time. It is a challenge. Actually, I think mentors are incredibly important, and if you don't have a mentor as you look for work, find one. One of the things that we do at Inovar is we have what we call Inovar University. We have about 200 different training modules depending on the position that you're in. Everyone that comes to work for us on day one, they get assigned a mentor or someone that's going to do some on-the-job training and support for them. So I believe that mentorship, training, development, we encourage everyone that's in a leadership position to have frequent, what we call one-on-ones with their leader or supervisor. These have to happen at at the best, it's weekly. Maybe they're only happening once every 2 weeks. But these are conversations about personal goals, career development. What are you working on to improve yourself? We really work aggressively on internal promotions. In a company of 400 people, we've had 44 internal promotions this year. So we really focus a lot of time and effort on developing people that come into our organization.
Great, thank you very much. Holly, I'm not sure where we are on time. Are we ready for Q&A, or do you want us to keep going?
I think we have one more question on leadership.
Oh, great. Okay, she's pointing at you, DeVon, so why don't you talk to us about what you think are probably the most important characteristics that you've seen or developed as a leader?
Okay, thank you. For me, as I think of leadership and who I want to follow, right? To me, it's similar to what I think Kent said, but really somebody that has a vision and is able to inspire others to support and to buy into and to make sure that vision comes to pass, that success happens as a result. And beyond that, I think also, and I think Craig may have mentioned this, but somebody that looks outside of himself, that looks for ways to help others to be the best that they can be. Again, set that proper vision, inspire, and then get out of the way and let them go to work and do their thing.
Like, could I just add one personal experience that maybe ties in here? Is with my direct reports, I think I had 5 at the time, and I had gone over these reviews, and here's what we're going to do to make the company better. Here's what you can do to improve as an individual that helps our company. And at some point I said, I wanted to go outside and have an HR firm come in, interview all 5 people and give them some tests, all that kind of stuff. I did it myself because I thought that would be good feedback on how they could improve as leaders of the company. Part of that test was kind of an intelligence IQ test, on how smart you were, I guess. And I'm the CEO, right? So I should score the highest. I scored the lowest. I mean, that was tough on my self-esteem, to be quite frank with you. But I guess the point is, you don't have to be the brightest. But if, like DeVon is saying, if you care about people, you care about those, your employees, and you respect those employees, and you care about your customers, and you're going to deliver to them and help them be successful, I think those are the qualities that really help drive a company across the success line.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. As I am consistently wowed by the number of successful leaders and managers that come from Utah State. I think you guys are awesome examples of that.
By the way, Blake, on that test I referred to, we all scored really high. I don't want you to get the mean. We all scored really high. I just happened to be the lowest.
Can you email us
No, I don't get it. No.
Yeah, will those stand up to independent audit? Yeah. I'd like to see the score.
Yeah, I will.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming. It's a real pleasure, I hope, for the students to be able to interact with people of your caliber and success. And so we'll turn it over now to maybe some questions and answers.
If you have a question, raise your hand, and please announce your major and your name.
My name's Levi. I'm an international business major. So a question I have for you 3, it sounds like you started relatively small in your careers, meaning you came onto these companies when they were small and built them from the ground up, or started from when they were definitely not quite as notable as they are now, which is a struggle for me as a business student because oftentimes I'm told you should go big right off the bat, which tends to encourage us to stray away from taking risks, especially when it comes to starting a company or joining a smaller company. And so my question for you is, how did you go about making that decision to be involved in a company that maybe wasn't quite as developed? And what's your advice for students that are torn between wanting to start something or want to get involved in a smaller company, or kind of go with the grind and get with a bigger company?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Good question.
I'll give it a go. For me, I think as an individual, you just have to decide number one, who am I? What are the non-negotiables as far as my character and what do I want? So define what is important to you. Is it money? Is it title or prestige that goes with that? Is it location, where you want to live? Is it some other factor that is important to you? And from there, itemize those. Decide which one is the most important. And then make the others work by satisfying what's really going to drive you and make you happy. At the end of the day, you're going to have a long working career probably. And just like when I was a student and it took me some time to find what I wanted to study, you may not land your favorite job or your life's career right out of school. Maybe you will, but you might not. You might have to go through some trial and error. In my case, I worked for a couple of different companies after I got out of school and before I landed at Juniper Systems. But ultimately, when I got to Juniper Systems, it felt good. Number one on my list was lifestyle. I wanted to live in Cache Valley. And from there, being able to land at a company like Juniper Systems that had a culture that I believed in, that I felt I matched, and that I could contribute to. And from there, it was just a matter of getting on the team, and getting engaged, and being the best that I could be to make it successful.
So I agree with a lot of what DeVon said. When we look to add people to our team, it's generally about fit. And is this person a fit for our organization? Do their values match our values? Does their career path match our projected career path? Is this going to work for them? So some people are going to be a great fit in small organizations that are incredibly dynamic and they have an entrepreneurial spirit and that kind of drive. Others are going to fit better inside of large organizations. So it's largely about fit. 10 years ago when I made the decision to leave a relatively large organization, I took a 40% cut in total compensation to join a relatively small, unknown, mostly undisciplined organization. And for me, I wanted to be back in Cache Valley. I wanted to be closer to my kids' activities. I wanted to be able to go to their basketball games and soccer games. So it was a change in lifestyle. At the time that I made that decision, I had no idea that this opportunity would present itself. I had no idea that someday we'd be negotiating $100 million contracts with large defense contractors. So those opportunities came along after that decision. But for me, it was about fit and lifestyle.
Yeah, just to echo what DeVon and Craig had said, it's a lot of what you really want, your lifestyle. And like both of these gentlemen, I wanted to stay in Cache Valley. And so you look at the spectrum of businesses, my playing field isn't very big, right? There's not a lot of playing field here. So when I started with Lundahl Astro Circuits, it was a small company, but I recognized that there was a tremendous opportunity, because I was coming in as the controller at that time, and they didn't have the systems or kind of the financial insights to that company that they needed to take it to the next level. And so I'm looking at this going, hey, this is something where I can make a major contribution to. And as it worked out, I became the president and so forth. So when you're in a smaller company, you probably wear a lot of hats. You probably have a lot more direct influence on the success of the company. If you're in a larger company and you're in the accounts payable or accounts receivable, you're not going to impact the company that much. It might be fairly comfortable, and you might be satisfied with the upward mobility that you can have in a larger company. But it really comes down to how do you want, where do you want? Because both will work. And we evolved from a small company to a big company. And when I was the CEO of a $1 million company or a $10 million company, you could touch all aspects of the company. You could go out and you knew everybody's name and you could make a difference in their lives. And that was fun. And you could sit down and say, we're in this together and let's go. As a bigger company, now you're dealing with attorneys and you're dealing with auditors and you're dealing with bureaucratic kinds of things, and you have your staff meeting, but you don't touch people as much. You touch your people, who then touch their people, who touch their people. And then you sit in a board meeting that goes for 2 days with 1,000 PowerPoint presentations that, you know, for my personality, it's hard to stay awake in the afternoon. Now, don't tell the rest of the board members that, but I want to get right down to the nuts and bolts of what we're doing and how do we make a difference. And so for me and my personality, that's probably a smaller company fit. Now, I like working for the big company because when we became a big company, it was fun. But at the same time, going from small to big, you have to reinvent yourself as a person because now you got to delegate and learn how to delegate, and you can't jump in and fix things like you used to. You got to motivate people to do that and set the culture. So it can work both ways. I think the fit DeVon mentioned, that's pretty darn crucial. When you look at a company to go to work for, how is the fit between me and that company? That's kind of crucial.
We have time for one more quick question.
My name is Jane, and I'm studying international business and marketing. And my question is, on the topic of leadership, what is a time that you failed as a leader, and how did you pull out of that?
Well,
You said this was a short question.
Short question, man, no kidding.
There's a long list.
I'm going through all the times I failed, and I got a hard time picking one out here. I probably... I look back and we talked a lot about the culture of the company, and at TTM we had a pretty good culture, but I could never get the production up, because and maybe this goes back to a little bit of the cash valley. We're service oriented, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes a little bit. So I hired a guy from California who came in, and I said I wanted 1,000 panels a day out of this facility. And, he drove hard, and he was able to get 1,000 panels a day. But we had some people that didn't fit this culture, so I lost a lot of people. And I lost a lot of good people. And I look back on that, and I wish I would have communicated more or talked more, explained more what we're trying to do, and help people understand the crucial aspect of us meeting. We booked all this work. We got to ship it out. We can't not work on Saturday. Those kind of things. I could have communicated that better. But in a general sense, to answer your question, I mean, there's no question you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail. That's probably not the important part. It's how you respond to that. And first of all, you've got to admit that we made a mistake, and here's what we're going to do to correct it, and then not have it happen again. But first admit it, stand up to it, and explain why it happened.
I agree with everything Kent said. Several years ago, we made a shift structure change at Inovar. Based on the data, it seemed like the right thing to do. We thought we'd done our analysis and our diligence, and we should do this. Turns out we were on that shift structure for 18 months, and it was the wrong thing to do, so we changed. And the right thing at the time was to stand up and admit it's the wrong thing to do, be transparent, be honest, accept responsibility for mistakes. We make mistakes every day, unfortunately.
I think, too, just one, as Craig was talking, I thought about, when you admit a mistake, you're being honest and upfront, but you're not showing weakness. I mean, that should come across as a strength, right? Otherwise, you'd be standing up there every day. But make sure that you come across as, we're doing our best, and that it's a strength to admit your mistakes, not a weakness.
I just echo what they both said. And in the spirit of a short answer, I'll give a political one. That we all do make mistakes. We're going to have failures. But we have to realize that we have an opportunity to reboot, start again, fix it, do it right, do it better, and carry on. That's how we grow, and that's how the company becomes stronger as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for responses to all those questions. On the note of fessing up to mistakes, I forgot to mention our moderator, Blake Dullersteller, who's on the Huntsman National Advisory Board. He did a great job, and we're thankful for his help. One last announcement before you all goes. We'd like all of you to bring out your phone, those that came in late, and follow Huntsman events, Huntsman_events on Instagram, so you can continue to get notifications on all these fantastic speakers that we bring in next semester. In conclusion, we also wanted to give our speakers some gifts with things from around Cache Valley. Please give them one more round of applause for their wonderful speeches.